A silver spoon with the hallmark filed off. Clothing with every single label physically cut away. And a body found on a remote Norwegian slope that, 50 years later, still has no name. In 1970, a discovery was made in the Isdalen Valley. On a remote slope among the scree and the rocks, something was found that simply didn't belong there. It was the body of a woman. But at the time of her discovery, no one could say who she was. And today, we are no closer to a name. More than 50 years have passed since that Sunday in November. In all that time, despite the efforts of many, her name has never been found. There is no record of her birth, no record of her life, and no record of where she came from. What we know is that she was there, on that slope, in 1970. But why she was there and how she came to be in that specific position is something that has never been established. The mountains around Bergen, Norway, are a place where people go to be outside. The Ulriken mountain range is a common destination. It's a place for locals and for tourists. Even in late autumn, the trails are used. November 29th, 1970, was a Sunday. It was a day like many others in that region. In the afternoon, the trails in the Isdalen Valley were busy. A man was out walking. He was with his 2 daughters. They were hiking through the area, moving across the terrain as many families did on a weekend. The weather that day was typical for the season. It was rainy. It was misty. The air was damp and the visibility was low, which is standard for Bergen in late November. To the people on the trail, it was just a normal weekend excursion. Nothing about the afternoon suggested that the day would be remembered. Nothing about the walk felt unusual to the man or his children at the time. In a place like this, there are certain things we expect to be true. Usually, a person walking these paths is accounted for. They have a home they are returning to. They have a family expecting them. There is a quiet, implicit expectation that if someone vanishes in a landscape like this, someone else will eventually notice they are gone. We expect a name to be missed. We expect a person to be searched for. But in the days following the discovery, that expectation was not met. There were no reports of anyone missing that matched her description. Not in the city of Bergen, not in the rest of Norway. And when the search was widened, there were no matching reports from Interpol. Across the entire continent and beyond, no one seemed to be looking for a woman of her age and appearance. The continuity of the social record remained intact for everyone else. But for her, there was only silence. What we can place with certainty is where she was 6 days before she was found. On November 23rd, 1970, a woman checked out of room 407 at the Hotel Hordaheimen in Bergen. She went to the front desk. She paid her bill. She paid in cash. Staff at the hotel noted that she requested a taxi. She followed the standard procedures for leaving. To the people working there, she was a guest like any other, though some remembered her as being somewhat guarded. She walked out of the hotel lobby, and she stepped into the city. What happened after that moment is not clear. The sequence of her movements breaks. 6 days later, her body was found wedged between 2 large rocks on that mountain slope. She was lying on her back. Her hands were clenched in front of her chest. One of the first people to reach her was a forensic officer named Tormod Bones. What he and the others found was a body that had been partially consumed by fire. The front of her body was charred. Her clothing on the front was burned away, but the back of her body remained largely untouched by the flames. It was later confirmed that she had died from a combination of carbon monoxide poisoning and the ingestion of sleeping pills, a drug called phenergan. The analysis showed that there were between 50 and 70 of these pills in her stomach. They had not yet been fully digested. But between the hotel and the rocks, there is a gap. From the moment she left the Hotel Hordeheimen on November 23rd, the trail stops. For the next 6 days, the record is empty. There is not a single confirmed sighting of her. No one knows how she traveled from the city center to the remote slope in Isdalen. No one can say where she slept. No one saw her eat. No one saw her walk. The nights between the 23rd and the 28th are entirely unobserved. In a world where people are seen and movements are noted, there is just a silence that lasts nearly a week. There is nothing to fill those days. There is no documentation of her existence during that window of time. The interval remains sparse. It remains empty. When the investigators looked at what she had with her, they found that the objects provided no clarity. In fact, the objects seemed to have been intentionally altered. Every single label had been cut out of her clothes. The tags that tell you where a coat was made or what size a dress is were gone. Someone had taken the time to physically remove them. The brand names had been removed from her personal belongings. Even the labels on the phenergan bottles found at the scene were not intact. They had been scraped away. Later, 2 suitcases were found in a locker at the Bergen railway station. They belonged to her, but they did not contain a name. Instead, they contained wigs. They contained silver spoons with the hallmarks filed off. There were pairs of glasses, but they were not prescription lenses. There was money from different countries: German, British, Swiss. There was also a notepad. Inside, there were rows of codes written in blue ink. Letters and numbers like N 24th November O and R 20th November R. People who had worked at the hotels where she stayed remembered certain things. They remembered she smelled strongly of garlic. They remembered she used different aliases. Names like Genevieve Lancier, Claudia Tielt, and Vera Schlosseneck. She had claimed to be Belgian. She had claimed to be South African. During the time she was moving through the area, the Norwegian military was conducting secret trials of a new missile, the Penguin anti-ship missile. Her travel dates overlapped with those tests. This is a fact that exists in the record, though a direct link has never been documented. The investigation itself faced difficulties from the start. What's confirmed is that the scene was not secured before the weather intervened. The site on the mountain was exposed to the elements. It sat open to the wind and the rain. Heavy rain fell on the slope. This happened before forensic teams could fully document the perimeter. The water washed over the rocks and the ground. Whatever was resting on the surface was subjected to the rain before it could be properly recorded. The environment changed the scene before the investigation could capture it. Despite the anomalies, the missing labels, the aliases, the lack of a name, the local officials reached a conclusion quickly. There was a pace to the decision-making that moved toward an ending. Bergen Police Chief Oscar Hordnes and attorney Anfinn Klovna oversaw the case. Within weeks, the official verdict was suicide. The file was closed, even though the identity of the woman remained established only as a mystery. But while the local police were closing the file, other agencies were watching. The National Surveillance Service, known as PST, was involved What we know is that they were conducting their own inquiries into the woman's movements. They were following the same path, but for their own reasons. However, what they found was not shared with the local investigators in Bergen at the time. The information stayed within separate departments. The two investigations sat side by side. They were looking at the same person, but they did not communicate. That's where the coordination ended. The official explanation of suicide is a matter of record, but it doesn't account for every physical fact. The fire that burned her was found uphill from where her body lay. And despite the intensity of the flames, there was no fuel container found anywhere at the scene. While traces of petrol were found in the soil, no bottle or canister was ever recovered. There is also the account of a 26-year-old man who had been on Mount Floyen that week. He reported seeing a woman who matched her description 5 days before she was found. He said she looked terrified. He also said she was being followed by 2 men in black coats. When he went to the police with this information in 1970, the report was not pursued. It was dismissed. It was left out of the final narrative of the case. It exists now only as an unpursued lead from a time when the investigation was already moving toward its end. In 1971, the woman was buried. She was placed in a zinc coffin. This was done specifically so that she would not decompose as quickly in case the technology ever changed and she needed to be studied again. Decades later, the technology did change. In 2016, her remains were examined using modern methods. Analysis of the isotopes in her teeth indicated that she likely grew up in the border region between France and Germany, specifically the area around Nuremberg, Frankfurt, or Alsace. In 2017, a DNA profile was successfully extracted from tissue samples that had been stored at a hospital. In 2018, experts looked at her handwriting from the hotel registration forms. The way she formed her letters suggested she had been educated in a French-speaking school system. These are new certainties. We know where she likely grew up. We know her genetic markers. We know the style of her education. But the case is still closed. What we have is a biological profile and a geographic origin. What we still don't have is a name. We have the where and the how, but the who remains absent. The investigation in Bergen ended in the 1970s, but the questions it left behind did not. Why she was traveling under 8 different names is still a mystery. Why she chose to remove the labels from her clothing is still unknown. The purpose of her presence in the Isdalen Valley has never been established. The silence that began on that mountain in 1970 is still there. It is a documented state of anonymity that has lasted for over half a century. And exactly where that certainty stops is where the record ends.